Hey, what's up, Mr. Ippolito students? This is Mr. Ippolito. Today we're going to look at love and war. Who or what did people love during the Civil War? This is an examination of primary sources. These are all letters that were written during the Civil War. And so what we're ultimately trying to find out is who or what did people love? Our goal at the very end, and I'm just going to briefly scroll down to the bottom, our idea is to annotate the document as we go along, and then we're trying to look for patterns or themes, right? So who or what did they love? We're looking for some common, maybe like 4 common themes or patterns that you saw as you were looking through the document. So we're going to go through all the documents. I'm going to scroll back up. I just want to remind you that you do not need to watch this whole thing. I am giving you permission to fast forward so that you can get what you need, right? Get what you need. Take what is valuable for you. I'm going to go through these document by document. You can go ahead. There are chapters in this YouTube video. You can skip and fast forward through the chapters if you'd like, just to get the things that you need. We're going to go ahead and start off with the introduction here. Again, if you don't need the introduction, you can skip ahead to, again, what you need. Let's go ahead and get started with our introduction, the first page. When the Civil War started in 1861, Americans turned their thoughts and their energy to the conflict. In both the North and the South, men joined the war effort as soldiers, doctors, clergy, and support staff. Just a reminder, clergy, those are people, religious leaders, right? Priests, ministers, rabbis, those are clergy. And support staff. So if you are not a soldier and you're not a doctor, you find other ways to help out with the army, right? Maybe you're digging ditches, or maybe you are a cook, or maybe you are building bridges, right? Those are just examples of ways that you can support the army. So men were leaving, lots and lots and lots of men, eventually into the hundreds of thousands, if not maybe over 1 million men, perhaps millions of men between the Confederacy and the Union. Not to be forgotten, women joined as nurses, gathered in aid societies. These were groups that put things together to help the war effort. Circulated petitions regarding political movements, and at home took over the masculine duties, right? We're talking about, we're living in, at this time, living in a patriarchy where it is, these are families that are led by the man, led by the husband, led by the father. So they're taking over what are traditional men's roles in the home, right? Took over masculine duties of running the household in their husbands and or their brothers, or in some cases their father's absence. For the first time, these women made financial, medical, and social decisions for their families. They became involved in politics. We're going to see this theme over and over again, following stories in newspapers and staying informed of current events. Why are they staying informed of current events? We're going to hopefully answer that question as we go through the documents. A common notion, a belief or an idea. A common notion is that war is synonymous with evil and hatred, that war is always bad and that war always equals evil and hate and destruction, which it does, but as a sharp foil or contrast to that notion, some of the best love letters in human history are written during times of war, and the American Civil War is no exception. Analyzing Civil War love letters between a husband on the battlefield and his wife at home helps historians discover many things. Tactical movements, in other words, where the generals were moving the armies from one battle area to another. Battle commentary, morale of troops, in other words, how they felt at the time, and thoughts of a soldier. But we would be remiss as historians. In other words, it would be a mistake for us as historians if we didn't also look at the social aspect of these letters through the lens of social history, the history of people, the history of families, the history of relationships. What can these love letters teach us about the values of Americans during the Civil War? What can it tell us about love during this time? Who or what did people love during the time of the Civil War? We will investigate the social context of the 1860s using Civil War love letters from both the Union and Confederacy to discover who or what did people love during the Civil War. So let's be history detectives. If you were here in class when we did this, we tried to take a guess, right? What do you think? What do you think that people might love? So we did a little bit of brainstorming, family and kids. Maybe we're going to see that theme. Country or state or region, right? Region, in other words, what part of the country or what part of the state do you come from? For example, a lot of people in our area love the Dodgers, right? So they show their love for LA, love for Los Angeles, their love for the Dodgers by wearing Dodgers gear, Dodgers jerseys, Dodgers hats, etc. They loved their husbands and wives? We're going to see examples of that. They loved their homes. They missed their homes and their families again. Maybe they love God and religion. Maybe we're going to see, we know that they did. It is a very religious time period for the United States. Very high rate of church attendance. And again, just like today, but I think even more so, the American public is a majority Christian nation. And then finally, perhaps they loved a good cause, right? Fighting for a good and noble cause, or what they felt to be a good and noble cause. So this is History Detective. We are now going to move into the very first primary source. Let's go. All right, subject one is Lucy Webb Hayes. By the way, I should let you know that the annotations that you're going to see in this document here are either annotations that I did or that Mr. Padilla did during our time when we were doing this together as a class. So my annotations or Mr. Padilla's annotations might look different than yours, but I think it's important to interact with the text. So as you're writing, you may decide to summarize information. You may decide to interpret information or write down what words mean. You may start writing in the margins. I'm going to show you an example from another teacher in just a moment. In document 3, you may decide to start writing down in the margins some of these common themes that are coming up, right? Family or religion or politics or staying informed. So you might want to do that. But however you annotate, that's going to be up to you. But I am going to encourage you to interact with the text, to write questions, to write down the definitions of terms that you think might be challenging, or just in some way write down things that are going to help you to interact with the text. All right, let's go ahead and do primary source number 1, Lucy Webb Hayes, the Union Army from Ohio. She and her family are from Ohio. Here is the setup. Letters between Lucy Hayes and her husband, Rutherford B. Hayes, of the Union Army, right? The North, as opposed to the South, the Confederacy. When not living in her husband's Civil War Army camps in West Virginia, Lucy Webb Hayes followed troop movements in the newspapers and in letters exchanged with her husband, Rutherford B. Hayes. That is Lucy Hayes right there, and that is Rutherford right there. This is this picture, by the way, taken a little bit later, right? They are younger during the time of the Civil War. This photo was taken afterwards, probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 years after the Civil War. Spoiler alert, he's going to live. He's going to survive to take this picture of them in later life. And her brothers, Dr. James and Dr. Joseph Webb. She took care of their 3 children while Rutherford was away at war. So this first document comes from August 9th, 1861. The war had just broken out in April of 1861. That was the attack on Fort Sumter, the Battle of Bull Run in early summer of 1861. So this is just a couple months into the war, right? So right at the very beginning. Dearest R, which stands for Rutherford. It's a term of endearment, right? We talked in different classes about different examples of terms of endearment. I might call my wife sweetheart or love. She is calling her husband Rutherford. She's just saying R. We are always so glad to receive your letters and Brother Joe's. They cannot come too often. She wants these letters to keep on coming. Please keep me up to date on what's going on. Because remember, today, if you want to communicate with a loved one, you just send a text message and boom, you're communicating. Or you can make a phone call, or you can have a video chat, right? FaceTime. Today, we can communicate instantaneously with the people that we love who are far away from each other. She can't do that instantaneously with her husband. The soonest that she's going to get information from him, the fastest way to communicate is through letters. They cannot come too often, but with me, I have nothing to write except assurances of my love, my hopes and fears. No, I do not let myself have fears, right? Because what is the worst thing that she could fear if her husband is in war? That her husband has died or that he's been severely injured. So she's trying not to let those fears creep in, or if she does, she's trying not to communicate those fears. She wants to be loving and supportive and positive in her letters to her husband. So far, I've kept a bright future before me, a happy reunion of the dear old family. So a reunion is when people come back together. So she's hoping that there will be a happy reunion, not only with her husband, but with her husband, their children, her brothers who are also away at war. Although, interestingly, she only talks in these letters, she's only going to talk about one brother. So we've kind of asked the question in classes, like, what's up with the other brother? And I honestly don't know the answer to where was the other brother. My guess was that the other brother was perhaps maybe in an army hospital in Washington, D.C., or somewhere else where it was safe and he was not, like, out on the front lines. Anyway, that's just a guess. Uncle Moses takes us one daily paper, the Cincinnati Times, and I always read it, especially the updates and correspondence from Western Virginia. Now, why is it important to get updates from Western Virginia? Well, that's where her husband is, right? And maybe her brother as well. So she is specifically looking in the newspaper every day for updates from where her husband, where the action is happening, where the war is happening, where her husband is, with a great deal of interest. Have you read Mr. Holt's speech at Louisville? I read it aloud, and we were all delighted with it. The Democrats have nominated H.J. Jewett for governor and Scott Harrison for lieutenant governor. So here in this paragraph, she's talking about how much she loves getting that information, right? She loves reading the newspaper, staying informed, staying up to date. And you're also going to notice a theme with her, with Lucy Webb Hayes, that she loves getting interested in politics and understanding who's running, what's going on with the latest politicians, with people, leaders, people in power, right? And perhaps what might be upcoming in the next election, because she's talking about nominated. So nominating for governor, for lieutenant governor, which means there's going to be an election coming up at some point in the near future. Perhaps they have governor elections in Ohio in 1862, right? So perhaps that is coming up. How much I would enjoy being with you, you know. Sometimes I begin to wonder when we will see you and count the days. Then I think where you are, right? So she's back at home, and so it's kind of easier for her to worry. Then I think where you are. You're in war, perhaps in battle. You have other things to concern yourself with, survival, and the survival of the troops under your command or the troops that are around you. You know, maybe you're not always thinking of us, but I understand that. Webb has just made his appearance. Laughing, he says, "Did you know, Mama, where I was? He has been all afternoon riding with John and Lem on the wagon. I think he will be fond of the country. He may be our little farmer yet." One of the things we talked about in class was who are Webb and John and Lem. I think we can safely assume that they are their children. They're three boys. And I think we determined, although we don't know for certain, but we think that Webb is perhaps the youngest of the three, because he's talking about he may be our little farmer yet. In other words, maybe John and Lem, they've already decided what they're going to do for a living. They've already decided what is in their future, what future career or path for them. But maybe Webb is the youngest, trying to figure things out. When I read my letters, I feel sad and sorry for you and Joe, that's her brother. Everybody big and small, send their love and best wishes. Your affectionate wife, Lou. So again, we're talking about sharing affection, affectionate nicknames, right? Her name is Lucy Webb Hayes, but she's not saying, "Sincerely, your wife, Lucy Webb Hayes." She's being very endearing and affectionate. Your affectionate wife, Lou. That's probably his nickname for her, right? And sometimes we have within our family or within the people we love, we have more than one nickname for each other or more than one term of endearment. So this is document number 1. And so if I were looking at this and thinking, who or what did people love during the Civil War? I might say, well, they love their family for sure, right? They love their husbands and their wives. They love their family in general. I think they love being involved. If I were just using this one document, they love being involved in politics and understanding what's going on with the world. They love keeping up with current events. I would say that they love their children. And then they just, again, this is back to love of family, love of husband, right? All right, so that is primary source number 1. We're going to move on in just a moment to primary source number 2. Stay tuned. All right, we're now in primary source number 2. Again, subject 1, but document 2. This is subject 1 because it's, once again, Lucy Webb Hayes. Again, her husband is in the Union Army. They are originally from Ohio. Cincinnati, Ohio, September 23rd. So this is a little over a month after the original letter, the first letter that we just read. Dearest Ruddy. Again, she has another nickname, another term of endearment for her husband. It has been a long time since I wrote to you, but every day and hour I think of you and long so much to see you. I received your letter dated the 11th on the 20th. This is important because it gives us an indication of how long it takes for the mail to send. In one class, we try to take a guess of how long would it take for letters to arrive. And one student said, months, and another student said weeks. It's actually surprisingly fast considering this time period and considering the fact that they're in a war. He wrote a letter, right? I received your letter. She's talking to her husband. He wrote a letter on the 11th, and she received it on the 20th. So within 9 days, he writes it on the 11th, puts it in the mail, she gets it 9 days later. That's actually pretty fast, all things considered. But I knew before that you were in the battle from the paper. I sent your letter on as you desired. It is pleasant to be at home, but each day we miss you more and more. I knew before that you were in the battle from the paper. So the newspapers can get information even faster than letter writing because this was my fancy drawing that I did in one class period. What is the technology that allows newspapers to get information even faster? It is, of course, the telegraph, right? So they are reporters who are out in the battlefield. They're able to rush to the nearest telegraph station, and they're able to telegraph their stories hundreds of miles away. So from Virginia out to Ohio or to Boston or to New York, wherever it needs to go, they're able to get that information that much faster because of the invention of the telegraph, which had been invented at this point. It had been around for 30 or so years, 20 or 30 years. At times we have such conflicting rumors of troubles in the presidential cabinet, then the present trouble with General Fremont, till I feel almost crazed and think there are no true men among our leaders. President Lincoln, I fear, lacks decision-making. He is too easy. So she's complaining about the president. There were a lot of people. Today we have such reverence and honor and respect and love for President Abraham Lincoln. But back then, in the moment, there were a lot of people who criticized Abraham Lincoln because it was in the middle of the war and they didn't know how it was going to turn out. And they were not everyone was sold on his leadership. President Lincoln, I fear, lacks decision-making. He is too easy. What do you think of General Fremont? The dispatch this afternoon is that Lexington, Missouri has been taken by Price. Then if Fremont's proclamation was right, why must it be modified for Kentucky? I have no patience nor sympathy nor even confidence in the Kentucky strife of Union men, but you will think I am spending my time very unprofitably. In other words, she's talking all about generals and presidents and leaders and troop movements and why is she so concerned with all of this, with leaders and generals and decisions, tactical decisions that are made? Well, perhaps one of the reasons she's so interested is because her husband will live or die, perhaps, as a result of those decisions that are made. When a president sends an army in a particular direction, when a general makes a decision to go this way or go around the enemy or take this path, literally life and death decisions are being made, and those are impacting her husband. Again, we know the end of the story. He is going to survive and he's going to come back home, but they don't know that at the time. So she has every right to be worried. Is my husband ever even going to come home? You will think I'm spending my time very unprofitably. In other words, like, you might think, sweetheart, that I'm wasting my time with all this politics, but no, I am still taking care of my 3 dear boys. I'm not just reading the newspaper and worrying all day. I'm taking care of our family, thinking of a dear husband and brother all the time. Mr. Stevenson has been to see me twice. I'm assuming that Mr. Stevenson is like a neighbor, right? Perhaps an older neighbor, an older gentleman who maybe was not eligible to be in war. He's too old to fight, or perhaps he's injured or whatever. There were still men left over, but all of the young, able-bodied, like if you could fight, then chances are you were off to war. The last time he wanted a deed of Mrs. Wibbler's, Mrs. W's school opened with 30 scholars, a very good beginning and a prospect of more. I support that initiative of a new female-run school as soon as Ruddy gets well. Now, here we're hearing a name. Now, we know that Ruddy is the nickname for her husband, but we're also seeing this name, and now we're thinking maybe this is also a nickname of one of their children, right? Sometimes children, we talked about this in class, sometimes your parents might give you more than one nickname. So the example that I gave was my daughter is Liliana Blanca Ippolito. I'll scroll back up really quickly. So we took, in order to name our daughter, who's now 17 years old, I've talked about Libby plenty of times, we took the L-I from Liliana and the B from Blanca and the I from Ippolito, and we made Libby. But we also call her Libs, or Lou is another nickname that we give her. So we give, sometimes as parents, we give our kids various nicknames, even, they might have a totally different, like, formal legal name, but this, I think, is what is happening here, right? So Ruddy is perhaps the nickname of one of the other children. I'm guessing, I'm not going to take a guess right now, but I think it's one of the 3 boys, and I'm guessing that he is sick. As soon as Ruddy gets well, expect him to start school there. And now, dearest, really quickly, let's just go back through before we get to the conclusion. She loves getting correspondence. She loves communicating with her husband, and she loves her husband, right? If we're summarizing who or what do people love. She loves staying up on current events, being involved in politics, right? And so she loves that. And now there's this new thing that I think that people love. We'll see if this is a common theme that recurs. Right here, she's talking about school, opening a new school with 30 scholars. Education. So education, I think, is another thing that people, maybe, let's see if this trend continues, that people may love during this time as well, because she's talking a lot about education here. And now, dearest, goodbye once more. Oh, how dear, doubly dear you are to us. We do not forget or cease thinking at any time. everything brings you to my mind. Blessing and kisses from us all, your affectionate wife, Lou. And I think probably the only reason why affectionate was cut off is maybe she was writing and she got to the end of the paper. Maybe she just didn't have enough space to write the whole word affectionate, so she abbreviated. So that is the end of document number 2, the second primary source. We'll see you next time for document 3. Keep watching to get to document 3. Thank you. All right, here we are with document 3, the last one that we're going to read from Lucy Webb Hayes, one more to her husband. This is now in November. The first one we read was from August, very early in the war. The next one was September. Now we're in November. Dearest Ruddy, how anxiously I have looked for a letter this week. Rumors have been all afloat, but no definite news. Sunday's Inquirer had little about the enemy. The paper stated Colonel Matthews and regiment had started for Kentucky. This morning's paper said that 6 Ohio Regiment, now in Virginia, and 2 Indiana, I'm assuming this is Indiana, will be ordered. And then the person who was transcribing this couldn't read it. Illegible just means I was not able to read it. So she starts off right away by talking about troop movements, different troops, moving into Kentucky, the 6th Ohio, 2 Indiana regiments. So just all about troop movements, right? So really loving staying up to date on what's going on with information, troop movements, and so forth. Next, let's talk about the family. Our 6th little son, Ruddy, is that now she's calling him Rudy, but maybe she just misspelled. I don't know. Our 6th little son, Ruddy, is the merriest, fattest little invalid you ever saw. So the good news is, I think at this time, today childhood obesity is a real thing. It's a real issue. I think back then when you called a child fat, that was actually a good thing because it meant that they were well nourished and like they were doing okay. So especially a little one, right? So if Ruddy is maybe a toddler, if he's maybe only 2 or 3 years old, those little toddlers with their chubby cheeks, I think we're okay. An invalid is just somebody who can't do anything. And so probably because he's still sick in bed, that's why she's calling him an invalid. Our sick little Ruddy is the merriest, fattest little invalid you ever saw. So at least he's merry, he's happy, he's in good spirits. He has escaped his chills more than a week. So he had a fever, and that fever has passed. And now the doctor thinks he is safe from a return. Safe from a return meaning, I'm assuming safe, like the doctor doesn't think that he's going to return to having this fever, this illness. Remember, there's no antibiotics. There's no modern medicine. So really the best thing to do when a family member is sick is you just have to comfort them. You just have to, put wet rags on their face to try to ease their fever. You try to feed them if they can eat. You try to give them water, keep them hydrated. Or tea. That's really the best thing that you can do in this situation because there are no antibiotics. There are not the modern medications that we have today when we get sick to comfort us. There's nothing like that. The best thing they have are things like opium. Their cocaine is introduced in the 1800s. Like that is extreme. We're not trying to go for extreme measures, especially not with children. So really for a sick child, you just have to comfort them and wait. Every day I see something to delight me in him. I fear he would almost eclipse the other children. That's interesting, right? Like I fear that maybe he's going to be, this is why I think Ruddy, I think he's Webb. Webb is Ruddy. I think the youngest. I'm worried that maybe he's just going to be the best of all the children, right? Total youngest child syndrome. I cannot describe him to you, a great, fat, laughing, blue-eyed boy of the most affectionate, loving disposition. I wonder who her favorite child is. He talks so much about Papa and Uncle Joe and says he is going to dance and laugh when you return, among other things. So talks about Papa, I'm assuming, talks about, Rutherford, his dad, right? Her husband. So, more talk of the family. Have I told you that Nellie Mead of Brattleboro, Vermont was regularly installed primary teacher at Miss Nurse's school? Again, we're back to education here. She appears to be very happy, such beautiful, lovely, affectionate children she never had seen before. All with her is sunshine. It's always nice when you have a happy, smiling teacher, right, who brings sunshine and happiness into a classroom. She has at last gained her true calling. This is what she was meant to do. She has been to see me several times, but I have only been there once owing to our sickness. So it sounds like not only is Ruddy sick, but the rest of the family is sick as well, which makes sense, right? Sometimes one family member gets sick and everybody else gets sick too. We received the money you sent, all right. I went down street with it to Mr. Heron, who apparently probably another neighbor older gentleman perhaps, but he had gone to Kentucky. So I asked for Mr. Stevenson. This is a neighbor we heard about previously who deposited for me. In other words, she had a neighbor, probably maybe because she was sick, she had a neighbor go to the bank and take, like literally, the husband sent her money through the mail, right? This is his paycheck. Deposited it for me. I am quite a manager and home accountant now. In other words, women have to be in charge. Probably men were normally in charge of the finances, but now she has to be the manager and the home accountant. She has to take care of the finances for the home. Once again, your affectionate wife, Lou. All right, so if we're reviewing, actually, I'm going to use the other teacher's notes here. If we're reviewing, what do they love? Current news, current events, staying informed, family, more themes of family, career. I'm going to push back against this teacher on career because I don't think that's the biggest theme. I think the biggest theme of this paragraph, again, is education. She's so excited that this teacher is bright and happy, all with her sunshine. So I think the theme of this paragraph is education. And then finances, I think she's just talking about the paycheck. So I think just family, right? And I think she's proud. I think she's proud that she's becoming more independent because she has to. All right. That was document number 3. We'll see you back for document number 4. All right, we're back. This is document number 4. We're still on the Union side, and this is a letter that this is right at the beginning of the war, July 1861. The war started summer of 1861. This is Sullivan Ballou with his wife and their 2 children. Here's the letter. Let's just jump right into it. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. In other words, I'm writing this letter in the event that I die. This could be the last letter of mine that you ever read, so I want to make sure that you understand, there are some things that I want to share from my heart. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. In other words, I go into this war. I am fully aware of my actions. I understand exactly what I'm doing. I am not afraid. I have no lack of confidence. I am fully engaged in this cause. I believe in this cause, which I think at the time for most Union soldiers was keeping the country together, right? Preserving the Union, saving this country. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. In other words, he's talking about the soldiers who have come before him, the people who made sacrifices so that our country would exist. And I am willing to take on that responsibility. They died for me, they died for us, and so now I am willing to in turn sacrifice my life as well. And now he gets into, so I think expressing a love of country, right? A love of cause and a love of country. And now we get into love of his wife. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but God could break. And yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all these chains to the battlefield. I love you. I want to be with you. But my love of country is pulling me to the battlefield, right? I love this country. I love you, but this is where I need to be right now. The memories of the blissful moments I have spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most gratified to God and to you that I have enjoyed them for so long. And hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and seen our sons grown up to honorable manhood around us. I have, I know, but few and small claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me. Perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, and when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you, how thoughtless and foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness. He's apologizing. Anytime I ever made you upset, anytime I ever hurt your feelings, I'm sorry. I wish I could go back and change it. I wish I could wash out with my tears every little spot, every little stain that I have placed upon your happiness. But, oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you, in the gladdest days and in the darkest nights. Always, always. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath. As the cool air fans your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for thee, for we shall meet again. He is hopeful. He says, I have few and small claims upon divine providence. In other words, knowing the will of God, knowing what God's plan is. But something whispers to me that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. I have a feeling that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to come back and I'm going to be okay. But he spends an awful lot of time saying, you know what? If something does happen to me, just know that I will be with you always, always. He dies. He was killed in battle a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run. One of the most heartbreaking stories that I have read or that I have heard from the Civil War. But there are lots of letters like this, right? So really quickly, who or what do people love? I think this is very much about love of country. You notice I haven't annotated this. I'm going to now let you do the annotating. I think love of country here in this first section, definitely love of his wife. And he talks about love of country again, love for his family, for his two sons, his children. May they grow up to honorable. I hope that I get to see our sons grow up to honorable manhood, which is interesting, this whole notion of honorable manhood. What does it mean to be an honorable man? And I think he's trying to demonstrate that through his life. He is offering himself. He's offering his life, potentially sacrificing his life, which ultimately he will do for his country, to keep his country together, to preserve the Union, to keep the dream of the United States alive. Love of wife, again, love of country. There's a lot of mention of God, so I'm going to say love of God and religion here. I think there's evidence of that here. And then finally, just back to love of his wife and wanting to comfort her. I will be with you. Even if I'm not there, my spirit will always be with you. Always, always. Okay. Whew, that's a heavy one. That's document number 4. We'll see you back for document number 5. All right, thanks for sticking with me. Here's document number 5. This is Stephen T. Andrews. He's also a Union soldier. He's from New York, and there's a little bit of a setup. We'll read that right now. When Andrews joined the Union Army, he left behind his sweetheart Maggie Little and faithfully wrote to her during his 4 years of service, frequently from posts where he was stationed in North Carolina. After he was honorably discharged on April 5th and 8 April 1865, Stephen and Maggie were married in October 1865. So they tell us right away he lived, he survives, but of course, in a time of war, you don't know that. Document 5, Camp War in Washington, D.C., February 11th, 1862. So 1862, sounds like he's still in camp, and he has joined maybe a little bit later on, right? He's not one of the first in battle at the beginning of the war. So let's read and see what's going on. Dear Maggie, I received your very dear letter of the 6th tonight, and now I will try and answer it before retiring, though it is somewhat late. But I can write better when alone than I can when the tent is full of joyous and noisy soldier boys, for we do feel good and make a good deal of noise. You seem to think I must get homesick sometimes. No, Maggie, you are mistaken this time. I never have been homesick. True, I do think of home often, of the dear ones, dear one I left behind, but I never have been homesick, not a bit of it. Now, this is interesting because he's basically telling his, I believe this is girlfriend at the time, right? His beloved, because they got married after the war was over, October of 1865. So he's basically telling his girlfriend, you know what, I miss you. I think of you. I think of my dear ones, my family, and dear one. I'm hoping he's talking about her, but I never have been homesick. So I miss you, but I don't miss you too much. I think is kind of what I'm getting from this. You say you wish you was a man. I don't, but supposing you was. But what do you think you would do? Would you be soldier and die for your country? I think you would make a good soldier, Maggie. This is weird. I do not know what I should do if I was a woman. I think I should make a scolding wife if I could coax any man to have me, Maggie. You seem to think I was a little cross when I last wrote you. I was not aware of it if I was, but I would be this time if I thought you would serve me as you said you would, viz. Kiss me. But I feel tip-top tonight and do not want you to accuse me of that this time. They have a little bit of a feistier relationship. So this is, I think it's just kind of lighthearted and funny. You seem to think that we do not stand much of a chance of ever returning if we go down the coast. In other words, you've told me you think I'm going to die. I would not have you think so. Hope for the best. We will have the same all-wise being, that's God, to watch over us there that we do here, or would if we were at home, and I think he is not unmindful of the humble soldier who is in service of his country. In other words, I think God's looking out for us. He looks out for us back home. I think he's going to be looking out for us here. When your school closes, you say you will have more time to write me than now. So she's a student. We're not sure how old exactly, but she's a student. Maybe she's either a high school student, perhaps, or maybe college. I'm guessing high school. I'm guessing they're a young couple. I am glad of that. And if we should be sent down the coast, I will let you know where to write me, and you must write often, for it will take letters a long time to go and return. We talked about that before, right? Now, remember this, but good night and one kiss from ever your own Steve. We talk about letters traveling a long time. This, he's writing her on the 11th. He got a letter from her from the 6th. New York to Washington, D.C. It's going faster. Why do we think it's going faster? I think it's because they put it on a train, and it's all within the Union, right? It's going from New York to Washington, D.C. So one part of the United States to another part of the United States, right? They're not having to go in a war zone. So he's talking about, you know what, if I go away, if I go down the coast, if I go further south, it's going to take longer for mail to get to me. So this is just kind of a fun, lighthearted letter. Again, what do you think? I feel like it's talking about love of country. I think it's talking about love of family, love of his girlfriend in a more lighthearted way. And I don't know how strong of an evidence this is for love of education, although it does talk about school, but a little bit of more of a lighthearted letter. All right, hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you back for the next document. Take care. All right, in case you were wondering when we're going to get to the Confederate side, we are here. This is document 6. 6 and 7 are actually, it's a correspondence between Stonewall and Anna Jackson. Now, you may have already heard the name Stonewall Jackson, a general in the Confederate Army. Here's the setup. Stonewall Jackson and Mary Anna, called Anna Jackson, were married in 1857. Even during the toughest campaigns in the war, Stonewall made time. And his real name, by the way, is Thomas J. Jackson, but his nickname was Stonewall. Stonewall made time to write detailed love letters to his wife. After she visited him during a winter camp, she became pregnant with their daughter. She delivered their daughter, Julia Laura Jackson, in 1862. Stonewall was a legendary general, but a tender-hearted husband and father. So this is a letter from Stonewall Jackson, Thomas J. Jackson, to his wife, Anna, September 25th, 1862. Anna, darling, my heart turns to you with a love so great that pain flows in its wake. You cannot understand this, my beautiful, bright-eyed, sunny-hearted princess. Your face is the sweetest face in all the world, mirroring as it does all that is pure and unselfish. And I must not cast a shadow over it by the fears that come to me in spite of myself. No, a soldier should not know fear of any kind. I think every soldier knows fear, especially a soldier in war. I must fight and plan and hope, and you must pray. Pray for a realization of all of our beautiful dreams, sitting beside our own hearthstone. Hearthstone is the stone area in front of a fireplace. That is a hearthstone, right? If you've ever seen a fireplace, there is like brick or stone in front of it. That is the hearthstone. Sitting beside our own hearthstone in our home, you and I, you, my goddess of devotion, and I, your devoted slave. May God in his mercy spare my life and make it worthy of you, your soldier. All right, that's definitely love of his wife. Whew, he pours it on thick there. Let's now look at this is the diary. This is not a letter. This is a diary of his wife, Anna Jackson, from 1863. Diary of Anna Jackson, excerpt describing when Stonewall met his baby daughter for the first time. It was raining, and he was afraid to take her in his arms with his wet overcoat. But upon arrival at the house, he speedily divested himself of his overcoat, took his coat off, and taking his baby in his arms, he caressed her with the tenderest affection and held her long and lovingly. During the whole of this short visit, when he was with us, he rarely had her out of his arms, waking her and amusing her in every way that he could think of, sometimes holding her up before a mirror and saying admiringly, "Now, Miss Jackson, look at yourself." Then he would turn to an old lady of the family and say, "Isn't she a little gem?" When she slept in the day, he would often kneel over her cradle and gaze upon her little face with the most rapt admiration. Rapt means like you're locked in, you're focused. So he's just like looking at his baby girl. And as a father, as someone who has had a baby girl myself, I can tell you there are times as parents, it may sound weird, but there are times when you just look at your child because you're just so enamored, you're just so in love with this child that you created. It's a beautiful thing. He would often kneel over her cradle and gaze upon her little face with the most rapt admiration, and he said he felt almost as if she were an angel in her innocence and purity. So both of these, document 6 and 7, love of, in this case, love of husband for a wife, love of wife for a husband, and love for your child, love of family, certainly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in, keep going. I'm not going to pause it. Let's jump right into 8 and 9. These are more Confederates from Virginia. Christian M. Epperly joined the Virginia militia in the spring of 1862 and mustered into the 54th Virginia Infantry in 1863. Epperly was a reluctant soldier. Reluctant means maybe I should join. I'm not quite sure. Reluctant means I'm not quite sure. You're a little tentative. You're a little hesitant. Reluctant. Reluctant soldier whose letters reveal a growing disillusionment with the Confederacy. To be disillusioned means, I don't know about this. I'm not quite sure if I believe in the cause. Mary, who remained at home in Floyd City, Virginia, shared his lack of loyalty to secession and the South. All grammatical errors are the author's own. All right, so here's document 8, August 15th, 1863, near Bellsbridge, Tennessee. My most dear companion, I hope God still blesses us with great blessings while we have to be apart. You don't know how glad I would be if I was just there with you this morning to see the sun rise over the hills in Virginia again, for everything seems so sad and desolate here this morning. It seems like the absence of dear friends and the present condition of things has brought deep reflection and sadness upon my heart. I hope it is a way God has provided to bring this war and time of sorrow to an end and to give us peace in our land again. This dude just wants the war to be over. He is not happy. Though I believe the South first started on a just course, this is interesting, right? I believed in the cause at first, but our own wickedness and disobedience has brought us to where we are. And I firmly believe we will be bound to give up subjugation. Subjugation is just another term for slavery, right? In other words, he's like, I think we're going to have to give up slavery. I think that's going to be our punishment. I don't think the South will stand much longer, and I am sorry to say it, for we will be a ruined people. But we ought to submit to anything to have this awful war ended, and I pray to God it will end yet. Christian. So this guy is saying, you know what? At this point, we kind of get what we get. Almost like they deserve it, right? Like almost like he's thinking, we kind of brought this on ourselves. Okay, so this is from Christian Epperly to his wife. And now this is the response. Document 9 is the response from his wife. Christian, I think if the head men of our troops, I think that's like the generals, the leadership, I think if the head men of our troops don't soon end this war, that the soldiers will, for they are running away from down east by hundreds. They was 500 went through here last week, well armed, and they say they won't go back anymore, and I don't blame them for it. What are these soldiers doing? They're deserting. They're like literally just getting up and walking away. They are leaving the cause. They are leaving the war. And it's interesting because August 16th, 1863, you may know what has already happened. We've already learned about this. The turning points, the two big turning points of the war happened in July 1863. The siege of Vicksburg, where General Grant won down in Mississippi, huge win, unlocked the Mississippi River, split the South in two, the big Union victory there, and then the other big Union victory in Pennsylvania, literally called by most historians the turning point. I'm going to call it the turning point of the Civil War as well, the Battle of Gettysburg. So this is right after the Battle of Gettysburg and the Siege of Vicksburg. Gettysburg, July 1, 2, and 3, 1863. Siege of Vicksburg ends July 4th, 1863. This is the turning point. They're starting to desert. I wish they would all run away, and these head men would be obliged to fight it out for themselves. In other words, I wish all the soldiers would leave, and the generals would have to fight. All the leadership, all the officers would have to fight. But as long as they can stay at home and speculate off of the poor soldiers, they don't care how long the war lasts. She's very critical of these generals, these colonels, these officers that are in higher ranking positions who can kind of direct the war direct the battle from a safe location and just send the soldiers off to die. So very critical, both of them, very critical of the war. All right, I'm going to pause really quickly, and then we'll come back for the final document, document number 10. Oh, really quickly, just like what did they love? I think they loved each other, but I think they also we talk about God here. I think they also just love survival, right? They love reality. They love survival. You know what? If this war is if this is a lost cause, just let's end it. Let's just go home. So, all right, we'll come back for document 10. All right, now here's document 10, July 15th, 1864. The war is coming to a close, right? We're in the final full year of the war, 1864. The war is going to officially end April 1865, so less than a year left. And this is from Chester, a Confederate soldier in the Confederate Army from Georgia, and he's writing to his sister. So let's check it out. July 15th, 1864, written near Chattahoochee, Tennessee, and Fulton County, Tennessee. So he's from Georgia, writing from Tennessee. Dear sister, pickets don't fire at each other now. We go down to the edge of the river on our side, and the Yankees, these are the people from the North, the Union soldiers, right? Those are Yankees, come down on their side and talk to each other. So the soldiers, they're literally going down to the river and like, what's up? How you doing? They're talking to each other now. The Yankees on picket opposite are from Ohio and seem very tired of the war. They say that their term of enlistment will be out in 3 months, and most of them say when that is out, they are going home. General Johnson has issued an order that there shall be no more communication between us and them, and I think it well that he has done so because they were getting too intimate. In other words, the soldiers, they're just these enemies. People are supposed to be killing each other. They're just going down to the river. Hey, what's up? Hey, how you doing? I'm ready to go home. Yeah, me too. So the general has said, you know what? You guys need to stop doing that. You guys need to stop being friendly with the enemy. Some men don't know what should be concealed. The Yankees are very much in want of tobacco, and our government gives it to us, and we used to trade tobacco with them for knives and canteens. They are literally going down to the river, and they are trading. Here, you want some tobacco? I need a knife. Oh, okay, well, here we go. They're trading with the enemy. There is a rock near the middle of the river to which they would swim and trade. The Yankees were not so bold for a long time, but a few days ago they got to coming across also. That has been broken up now, and if any trading is carried on and is done contrary to orders. So both sides, leaders on both sides, the officers on both sides have said, hey, you got to stop that. Stop hanging out with the enemy. Stop being nice to them. I took some tobacco down with me the other day, but I found out when I got there, communication had been stopped. As I was sitting on the banks, right at the edge of the river, one of the Yankees from the other side called to me to know if I had any tobacco. I told him I had. He said that he had a good knife to trade for it. I told him that trading was prohibited. He said, your officers won't see you. Come over. I want to chew a tobacco very bad. I asked some of them who they were going to vote for president. One of them said Old Abe, but most of them said they were for McClellan. That's interesting, right? Because we've already learned in the election of 1864, it was Abraham Lincoln versus General George McClellan. And so it's interesting that these soldiers, one of them said they're going to vote for Abraham Lincoln, but most of them said they're for McClellan. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because McClellan was talking about let's just stop the war. Let's just call it. Whereas Abraham Lincoln was like, no, we got to finish this. We have to finish. We have to win this war. We have a fine rain last night. That was much needed. I had my oilcloth pitched for a tent, but it leaks very badly. One of the Yankee lieutenants promised to mail some letters for one of our officers, and I wrote to Aunt Martha expecting to send it, but General Johnson stopped the proceeding, so I did not send it. That's interesting, right? One of the Yankee lieutenants, one of the Union officers, one of the enemy officers was like, yeah, I'll send your mail for you. Don't worry, just give it to me. And the Confederate officers was like, no, you can't do that. Stop that. Stop being nice to them. And I wrote to Aunt Martha expecting to send it, but General Johnson stopped the proceeding, so I did not send it. There is a force of Yankees on this side of the river. Why General Johnson don't drive them back, I don't know. He must have some object in view. Yours truly, O.D. Chester. So what do they love here? I think at this point, this late in the war, I think they just love that. Well, loves his sister, right? He's right to his sister. And I think it sounds like they really just, they love just connecting on a human level. They're connecting with the enemy on a very personal human level, which I find fascinating. All right. Well, I love reading this letter. I think it's a lot of fun. Okay. So now I'm going to recommend, in order to get the proper, to get the full effect from this, organize your annotations. Look through all of the letters and figure out what are some common themes, right? So one of those themes, I'm sure, that you can figure out is husband or wife, right? Love for your spouse. So what is some evidence that you found from that? What are some different documents or different passages where you find that there's evidence that they love their husband or their wife? That's easy. There are multiple themes, right? You could have 5, 6, 7, or 8 of these at least. But what are some common themes that you found? So I think, again, the very first one, probably husband or wife, sweetheart, boyfriend, girlfriend. But then from there, pick 3 others and then see what kind of evidence you can find to support each of those. And then we'll be doing something with this a little bit later on. All right, I hope that was helpful. If you stuck around for the whole video, congratulations. You're awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in class next time. All right, take care. Bye-bye.